This conference will now be recorded.
So yeah, I was just saying we don't have anybody new at this point on the call. However, we welcome back Jim McCoy, who we haven't heard from in a long time, and I did get a very nice email from Jim about Professor Bill, and we referenced that, Jim, during the tributes that we paid to Bill last week. And I know that you tried to do some work with Bill to improve the level of awareness with respect to BRCA and prostate cancer. Isn't that right?
That is right. Not sure how effective I'm being, but I'm spreading the word a lot, as much as I can.
Mm-hmm. Have you seen this, the website that Clovis put together? I think it's called...
Yes, I have. Yes, I have. It's a pretty good basic intro for those who are new to it.
Right. And for those of you who are wondering, Clovis technology manufactures rucaparib, which is more commonly known as Rubraca. And I'm not exactly sure how it came about, but sometime in the last 5 or 6 months, they launched a website. I think it's called BRCA Blue, isn't it? Or something.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yep.
They launched a website to publicize the fact that the BRCA mutation can affect men too, especially through prostate cancer. So you know, I'm not sure what their purpose is. I know that niraparib got approved, got a expedite. No, what was it called, Jake? Not expedited approval. It got, what was the name of the FDA category it was put into?
Oh, breakthrough.
Breakthrough. That's it. Of course, there's some talk from the trial that was published at ESMO. I forget the name of it. I was reading it today as well, and I forget the name of it. Do you remember, Len? The ESMO trial that the FDA may approve olaparib for BRCA positive prostate cancer men. Or Jim, do you remember the name of that trial?
No, I don't.
I think it was Profound.
It was Pro something.
Profound, yeah. That was it. Yeah, I was just going to look it up because I know where I filed it. Yeah, Profound, that's it. So there was a trial, Profound trial, that reported at ESMO about a month ago, and reported that taking a PARP inhibitor did make a difference. It wasn't it was statistically significant, but it wasn't an awful lot of time in terms of the either the overall survival or the performance-free survival. But again, and we've discussed this so many times, that they tend to give these drugs to people that are very late stage and not early stage. And you know, Carl Foreman who's not on the call today, is kind of the exception on BRCA so early. And I guess to some extent, Professor Bill was. And one would hope that it made a significant difference for him. I think he started taking olaparib in 2014, if I remember correctly. Jim, is there anything else that you would like to say or add about either BRCA or Bill?
Well, both actually. Bill was just terrific, and still a great resource for all of us who want to understand the basics of BRCA. His what I call primer on the US2 archive is still the best out there. It's better than the new Clovis website. And as far as the approvals of the new PARP inhibitors, I'm looking at that as a bit academic at this point, because every med-onc that I talk to is not hesitating to prescribe any of the PARP inhibitors that are available. Olaparib is certainly the easiest. They're not waiting for the bureaucracy to catch up with the reality.
Right.
Did I hear you say Carl Foreman is an olaparib veteran?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll have to track down Carl again. I'm looking at absolutely the earlier stage, even prophylactic application of PARP inhibitors. As you may recall, I've been working a potential trial with UCSF now for many months, and we're down to the details on that one as to whether I will go through a trial with them or just have it prescribed off-label by a local med-onc. This would be Alan Ashworth's muse of 1 month of olaparib or treatment prior to becoming proven M1, okay, as just an attempt to see if it has any, I'll use the word prophylactic rather than vaccination or inoculation, because nobody knows the mechanism. The best of the pros can't really explain the mechanism of PARP inhibitors or how even a vaccination would work. So I'm still exploring, but getting on a short timetable for pulling the trigger on either a prophylactic PARP inhibitor or Provenge. I am still not proven metastatic. I am past. I am still officially undetectable or at the detectable limit of PSA, extremely low. I also happen to have about a month ago passed my statistical median survival as a post-primary treatment BRCA patient, which is a very odd place to be. As an engineer, I understand that all that means is that half of the guys like me are already dead. But that I think I may have described to this group, I've learned the meaning of the term conditional survival. And I'm in that world where if I'm doing well, I'm likely to continue to do well, but I'm not a patient guy, and I want to move forward with something, because the more I learn about BRCA, the more I learn it's multiple hand grenades with the pins pulled out. And I'm getting more tests. Jeffrey Turner ran a Foundation 1 on me, and added ATM to my mutations. And UCSF has added FOXA1, which is in the top half dozen mutations for those who go into the neuroendocrine transition, which is another whole topic in itself. And I'll just stop there because I'm already deep into the ravings, and I continue to explore and rave, and we'll be doing something hopefully soon on a anticipatory prophylactic preemptive treatment basis. Period.
Yeah, Jim, this is Peter. Keep in touch. I mean, I introduced you to Jim St. James at the PCRI conference for a few minutes there, and he's.
Oh yes, I remember.
Yeah, he's in the club too, and he's got a medical oncologist here who's never had a BRCA patient before. And, we talk about it every month when we go to see him. Fortunately, he's in the UCSF queue as well, and he's got Dr. Borno there. But anyway, we bring up the olaparib question a fair bit. I mean, Jim's already is metastatic, and it looks like he's starting to fail. He can't tolerate Zytiga at all, but he's having a rough time. He's already been through six docetaxel. I tried approaching the docs on the carboplatin issue, but they were resistant to that. So I'm not sure where we're going, but it's a tricky one out here in the hinterland.
They won't even go with a platinum cytotoxic chemo agent?
They didn't on the last round. No, they wouldn't do that.
In the civilized world, they call that near malpractice for a BRCA patient.
I know. It's the elephant in the room, but they're not paying a lot of attention to it right here. So anyway, I keep going and I keep pushing, and we'll see how it goes. And I think the UCSF connection might be the way, might be the key on this one. I don't know.
So, Peter, who is refusing the carboplatin? Is it your local person, or is it coming from Dr. Borno, or is Dr. Borno involved?
I think she is, but since she's so far away, I think it was the local guy that did the routine for the chemo. I mean, I asked about it, but he didn't seem to be too keen on it. I mean, it's kind of a tricky situation. I mean, if you push too hard, it gets a little weird. I mean, the doctors are nice guys, but they are the doc, and it's an interesting one.
Well, I mean, I do hear you, but one of the ways that we've approached that in the past is to try and link doc with doc. So I'm just wondering whether Dr. Borno has actually had any conversations with the doctor on the island.
I don't know if they've actually talked. Since Jim is having a hard time with Zytiga, the last thing Borno said was try Erlita. And I'm not sure that's the answer myself. So I'm not sure where this is going. He's on vacation now. He's over in New Mexico. He'll be back in a week, and we'll engage and start talking more about what's going on.
Is he getting treatment through Kaiser, or is it through a private medical oncologist?
Private.
Okay. Well,
yeah, I think he talked to you, Len, right? He called you a couple of weeks ago about darolutamide.
Yeah. To be honest, my sieve brain, I don't recall the details of our conversation.
I think he was looking for an alternative to Zytiga and exploring darolutamide. And
Oh, yeah, that's right. I spoke to him about darolutamide. I told him to do whatever he could to try and get on that since he was having a hard time with Zytiga. I personally found darolutamide to be much, much better, much fewer low intensity side effects.
That's its reputation.
Yeah, well, everybody's different, of course.
Yeah, I mean, the big issue, and it's the same issue that Jake is facing, is that you know, when you have established metastasis, it's kind of hard to get that approved, and I'm not sure. I mean, given that you did have sites on bone sites, Len, I don't know how you slipped through on that one.
It's a technicality, Rick. I found out that, and I mentioned this to Jake, the FDA approved darolutamide for those who were negative for metastases on the traditional, which they consider state-of-the-art, bone scan, technetium 99M, and I was negative on that scan. But I was positive on the experimental scan. And I suppose because it's experimental, the FDA can't say, oh, well, you have metastases, so you're not eligible. So that's how I got in.
I remember now reading. Yeah, thank you for reminding me. Yeah.
Len, how old was your bone scan?
How what?
How old was your bone scan?
I had one done before the PYL scan and then after the PYL scan.
Oh.
And so after a positive PYL scan, I had a technetium bone scan and it was negative.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what sort of size are the bone mets, Len?
You know, this is peculiar because I asked Dr. O that same question, and he said, when it comes to bone lesions, that you can't give a measurement size like you can with a lymph node. I didn't pursue that further, but that was his response.
Wow.
I don't know what the difficulty would be, but he said
Anybody else have any anything to contribute on that? Has anybody else been told the size of their bone mets before?
I think if I remember correctly, on mine they didn't say what size it was. They talked about SUV. I think that's the term. Uptake.
Yeah, so I think it's selective uptake value.
Yeah, that's the way they measure my mets. And I guess the higher the SUV, the more aggressive it is.
Yeah, I guess it's a measure of the intensity of
maybe that's what
how it lights up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But to answer your question, no, they didn't. On mine, they didn't give any measurements.
And Anderson, have you ever gotten any indication of size of your bone mets?
No, the only comment Paul had made when I visited with him on the 19th was the one on my hip appeared to be brighter, which I thought was unusual because we always talk about size measuring, but apparently bone mets, they don't measure. They as they've been stating, they're actually some form of, increased brightness, I guess.
Right. Interesting. I guess it's amazing. We've never really had this discussion before. In all the years we've been running these calls, who's the radiation expert on amongst us? Jim McCoy, what do you know about? You're the engineer, man. What do you know about measuring bone mets? Anything at all?
It is the it's a game of sensitivity, selectivity, resolution, and signal to noise ratio that is unresolved, and that the definition of the transition. I'm making a philosophical as well as engineering statement here to the recorder. The definition of the transition from M0 to M1, okay, or you could call it N, anything beyond 0, is totally dependent upon our technology of detection of the Mets, and that is just painful reality. Okay, the old bone scans today are almost useless. The PSMA PET scan is probably the best reasonably broadly available out there today to identify both bone and soft tissue Mets. Technetium is now completely obsolete. I don't think you can even find it. Maybe some corners of Europe. There's different doctors have their preferred scans to use. Oh my God, what's the F18? Oh, Axemin.
Right.
I have zero faith in Axemin. Okay, I don't know how it got through the FDA. It's a sloppy scan. It's many false positives, low sensitivity, low selectivity. Some engineers might call it a junk scan. Okay. And I'm not being gracious anymore about some of this crap that's going on. Fabio Almeida got cut off at the knees for doing his carbon-11 acetate trial work in Phoenix. That was perhaps one of the best scans out there. Games played with the FDA that I won't go into on a recording. But Gene Kwan at Mayo with his carbon-11 choline, okay, which I understand now is available not only in his site in Rochester, but also in Arizona for Mayo, is a damn good scan, is a very good scan. The other scans are really gated by, I don't have a whole list in front of me, but it depends on what center you go to and what investment they've made and what multi-$100,000 scanning machine that they describe as their standard for defining when you've transitioned from M0 to M1. And frankly, I think it's just chaos. You can't get those scans in most cases until you've demonstrated PSA failure, biochemical failure. And the sensitivity of many of them is dependent upon higher or rapid doubling time. There are some that have been in work in the lab for like a decade. You can write this one down. Hyperpolarized carbon-13 MRI has over 10,000 times the signal intensity of other MRIs, but it's a GE science project right now and is a long way from getting into the clinic, but is being used in a few trials here and there. So if I'm not very encouraging about scans defining the realities of the fuzzy transition from M0 to M1, that's my intent. Guys, we don't really know.
Mm-hmm. Jerry Pelfrey, you have some background in this area, don't you?
Yes, but not too much with the MRI and how you would really measure, like he was saying, measure the Mets where they are. I've never gotten into that. And 3T MRI has just come about, and I've been out of it for 13 years. So I'm kind of, when I retired, we were just transitioning into all of the digital products that we had. And we actually started going, Kodak actually started going into equipment. And then they sold us off to a company of venture capitalists up in Canada. So sorry, can't be of much help on techniques or any of that.
Well, a lot of really great information coming out here. I mean, I don't know that it leads us to any better or worse conclusions, but this is a really good discussion. Anybody else have anything they'd like to contribute on this issue of types of scans, M0 to M1, size of Mets, etc., etc.?
That's a rouse.
Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, I've been thinking about the overdependence of ADT, which limits your availability of scans. To get into trial scans and so forth, you've got to be off ADT usually. And a lot of guys get overdependent on ADT, or the doctors get over. I mean, they freak out with the thought of your playing around with your PSA going up and watching it climb a little bit. And you got to be willing to take that risk to get a really good scan. I had great success with it, and my scan measured the size of the lymph node nets in me. I knew exactly how big they were going in, and even though they were quite small. So that's my take on it. That you got to be willing to take that risk, and a lot of guys and doctors don't take that risk of dropping the ADT.
Jim, you wanted to say something?
Not really, but I will ask Peter, which scan showed the specifics of your lymph node met?
That was the gallium-68 at PSMA at San Francisco, UCSF.
Yep, that's the one that's getting the most attention and the most encouraging around the country, maybe around the world right now.
And of course, the other factor is you want to go to an institution where they've got their wits about them in terms of reading the thing. They're not just guessing at little smudges on film.
That's right.
I mean, Jim, you say that the gallium-68 is getting a lot of good reports, but what about the F18 PYL that landed at NIH?
That puzzles me a little. I wrote that one down. I'm at my computer. I'm going to even look and see what it is. That's not an Acumen scan, is it? Acumen.
No, it isn't. It's supposed to be, and I'll let Len speak to this momentarily, but it is supposed to be a better version, an improved version of the gallium-68. It was at one point being trialed by Peter Carroll at UCSF, and Alan Edel, who for me is probably the best advocate out there in this area, seems to feel that is the state-of-the-art scan. Len, what can you tell Jim about the F18 PYL?
I can't really speak to the science behind why it appears to be the best scan available at the moment. But as Rick just alluded to, Alan Adele, who's, as far as lay people are concerned, he seems to be the most knowledgeable about all things concerning radiation. He is, in his blog, he assembled from the literature a list of all of the scanning agents and the percentage of individuals who were scanned at different PSA levels, and he put it in table format. And I actually have it, and I could ship it to anybody who's interested. And it shows that the 18F DCF PYL was the most sensitive scan available, with gallium-68 coming in second place. There were various versions of the gallium-68, different antibodies involved. But yeah, that's from the literature as assembled by Alan Adele.
Could you send that to Jim?
Yeah, sure.
I was going to do that.
I'm not sure I have his email, Rick. I'll send it to you, and then you can send it
to me. Great. Yeah, and I'll forward it on to Jim. That'd be great. Thanks. Save me looking it up. I think I know where it is, but if you've got it handy, it would be great.
Yep.
Yep.
Oh my goodness! I see Cam has joined us from Australia as well. Excellent. Well, hello, Cam.
Hello there.
Hello. We'll come up. We will be going down the roll call. We've actually been doing something we don't often do, which is just having an interesting sort of open discussion. One thing leading to another. Just before I leave you, Jim McCoy, and we will come back to see if there's anything you particularly want to raise, but there is something. I'm very fascinated with this remark that you made about pre-treating BRCA men, because it's really an interesting concept. Now, we should tell you with Carl Foreman, Carl was diagnosed metastatic, and then he went through this strange trial of to see if debulking through surgery would help him at all. He failed abiraterone quickly, and he seems to be having some success with the olaparib. Do you have his contact details, or do I need to send them to you?
I think I have his email address. I will dig it out and definitely track him down. Olaparib experience is golden right now. Patient olaparib experience is very meanhis
He's being treated by Charles Drake at Columbia Presbyterian. Is his quarterback. He's also at the New Jersey Cancer Center. He's got another couple of guys there, but I think the guy that's really calling the shots for him is Charles Drake at Columbia Presbyterian. Yeah, I mean, the idea of treating somebody as soon as you find out they're BRCA positive, well, I mean, Len, that would affect you too, wouldn't it? Even though you're somatic and not germline.
No, I'm both somatic and germline.
Oh, you're somatic and germline. I'm saying Len is just somatic.
Okay.
But how can they tell that you're somatic and germ? I mean, I can see that they could test you somatic and then show that you're germline. But if you're germline, it's in every cell anyway. So we don't know what's coming from the somatic side.
That's an excellent question, RD. And I got that differentiation from UCSF now a year and a half ago. They got the germline BRCA indication from a saliva test, and they called it germline, and they got the somatic BRCA determination from the UCSF 500 sequencing test, where they sequenced my actual biopsy tissue. And they said they were the same variants of BRCA2. And interestingly enough, the Foundation 1 test now, a year later, calls exactly the same mutation and says it is, they can't state whether it is germline or somatic or both. So,
so usually what happens is that if in a somatic test you come back with a BRCA mutation, the only way you can tell if it's somatic or germline is by doing the germline test. And if the germline test is positive, then it's attributed to it being a germline mutation, even though it shows up in your somatic test, as it will. Does that make sense?
yes, I don't know how they would separate, even in the tissue analysis, whether it was a somatic or germline. So what you described makes just solid logic.
Right, and I have actually asked them this, and they say they cannot. I've talked about it with Foundation Medicine. And
excellent.
So they cannot do it. So the only way you can ascertain whether you're germline is you have to do a separate germline test, which is what Len did. So Len knows Len knows his is right. Len, that's how you know you're somatic only.
Yes, because they did both germline and somatic, and it only showed up in the somatic, which is to say it only showed up in the tumor biopsy, not in my normal cells. So as I understand it, if you have any germline mutation, that means it's in every single cell in your body. So of course it's going to be in your tumor as well.
Right, exactly.
Yes, for sure.
I learned that from Professor Bill, God rest his soul.
So I'm the same as Lynn. I'm somatic in terms of BRCA2, but not in terms of germline.
But you see, what's really interesting is that this type of test clinical trial that Jim's been working on with the boffins in the BRCA Center at UCSF, my limey buddy Alan Ashworth and Pamela Munster, could have some importance to people that are just somatic as well, I would think, right, Jim? I mean, why wouldn't it also be applicable to see whether early treatment of men who are just somatic has an impact?
It sounds completely rational to me. Okay.
Yeah.
But then, boy, one of the things I'm learning is that medical doctors and scientists are two different animals.
Yeah.
And see the world a bit differently.
Yeah. Okay, well, look, this has really been, for me, it's been very informative. I hope everybody's gotten something out of this discussion for the last 45 minutes. It's, like I say, we don't do this often, but I think it's worthwhile today, especially since we don't have any new guys. I am now going to run down the line and see who would like some time and like to discuss today. Starting with Jake. Jake, anything that you would like to talk about today?
No, thank you. We spent enough time on me last week. Give the guys a break.
Oh boy. Well, you know, occasionally, Jake, we have to hound you down because we know you're always going to say no. So sometimes we have to say, okay, we're going to get him this week. So, Peter, is there anything you'd like to talk about?
No, I'll pass right now. I just had a small issue, but I'll If it's time, I'll bring it up.
Okay, I'll put you down for like a half tick. Bill Franklin, how about you, sir?
No, I'm good. I'm actually
Okay.
fading kind of fast. I've had a lot of early mornings lately. So.
Oh, okay. Dennis Correa, anything for you?
No, Rick, just listening in.
Okay. Len, anything for you?
Next week, Rick, I had a blood test today, including PSA, but no results yet. So next week.
Okay. Les Shelderup, anything you'd like to talk about?
Maybe just one quick comment.
Yes, we can give you a quick comment. Paul Frieder, anything you'd like to talk about?
No, nothing for me tonight, thanks.
Okay. Mr. Anderson, back in Phoenix, anything you'd like to talk about tonight?
I must admit it's going to be kind of quiet tonight. Nothing from me.
Somebody better come up with something, otherwise we're going to dive back into this great discussion we've been having. Jim McCoy, anything else that you'd like to talk to us about?
Just one question. If there's anybody on this call that has had Provenge.
Okay, we will come to that. Larry Fish, are you still in Dominican, or where was it Dominican you were in last time?
Yeah, I'm still in DR. We're going back tomorrow.
Okay. Anything you'd like to talk about tonight?
Not really, Rick. Sorry.
It's okay. You don't have to apologize. Jerry Pelfrey, how about you? You're muted, Mr. Pelfrey.
Yes, I'd like to talk just a little bit about what's coming up for me.
Absolutely. Cam, how about you? And how much time do you have for us tonight?
I don't have anything to talk about. I'm just here to brighten up your evening.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm not going to make any apologies for the English handing the Australians their lunch last weekend, but we'll see if they get handed their lunch in the next one, which I think might well happen, to be honest.
Moving right along, back onto cancer, please.
Okay. Okay. Well, Peter, it looks like we have quite a lot of time, so I will come back to you. Les, why don't we start with you?
Okay, I was just going to comment on Bill Jensen's situation, that he is currently up in Chicago per your suggestion, and hopefully we can find out. I was hoping that he might come on tonight, but he probably isn't back yet. But he certainly appreciated your effort and referring to the other people and their responses to him. Everyone that was associated with this had helped him very much, and he sure appreciated it.
Well, thank you for that feedback. Just a couple of quick comments. I want to try and make them as general as possible. First of all, I want to thank Ken Anderson and Jim Ward and Cam and everybody, all of the younger guys who tried to help Del formulate his questions. My biggest concern was that there were a lot of questions that were very general. And I understand when you first get diagnosed, and Ken and Cam and everybody, you have a lot of questions that some of us now sort of feel are kind of basic knowledge. And I would just like to encourage everybody to try and raise as many of the basic questions on these forums rather than with your doc. And we can navigate you to those questions that you need to talk to your doctor about. And the reason I say that is because a lot of times the doctors don't have as much time as you would like them to have. And there are some questions that you really want those docs to be focusing in on. And if we can help you with the basic stuff, and men who are on this call can share their experience, then it gives you time to be very specific about your particular treatment or to discuss trials or what have you. And that's just kind of a very basic observation. Would anybody like to comment on that or come back at me on that?
Sure, I can come back. I'm not exactly sure what you're looking for, but I mean, most recently I put a request to Paul Korn at MD Anderson about anything that might be coming in the near future, because no one knows exactly how long, enzalutamide is going to actually work for me, whether it be 8 months, 12 months, or possibly longer. And his reply was pretty short, just that he had other things in mind, but he didn't elaborate on what the other things might be. So, I mean, I understand what you're stating, Rick, but without that additional information from your GU Medonc, I'm not sure the question. I'm not sure.
Cam, did you want to say something?
Well, Ken and I are in contact quite regularly, so we're probably preaching the same message, but I certainly feel like half the time going to see the Medonc is just a waste of my day. I can get as much information from Euro today, and I'm just paying $110 to say hello and say goodbye. So, I mean, I saw my Medonc last week. I had an increase of from 0.121 to 0.170. He took me off bicalutamide and told me that I should start thinking about writing the letters for my kids. So that was great.
We'll come back to that, Cam, for sure.
Yeah, that was a great appointment. So I don't know. I think you need to get to the point with. I mean, the reason I didn't go back on those younger person questions was because I've probably reached the point where I'm brutally honest nowadays. I don't ask how long I've got. I don't care. I just want to know what's the next treatment and when are you going to pull the finger out and find something. So, I'm in contact with Larry Fong. I'm in contact with my oncologist in Australia, and I just don't want to mess around. I don't want to be told I'm going to be dead in 18 months. I want to be told what's the next treatment that you're going to give me, and let's get it into me quickly. But I certainly feel like maybe we're all in this territory of no one knows what's next. So it's pretty difficult to be a patient. I mean, you have to be a psychologist. You have to be your own best advocate. You have to juggle everything, and it's a pretty tough gig.
Jake, did you want to say something on this?
Hello?
Who are you asking, Rick?
You. I thought you sort of moved like you wanted to say something before.
Oh, no. I was just listening. Sorry.
Okay. I thought maybe you had something.
I do. Hang on a second. First of all, Richard Foodie's on the call, so you want to check with him.
Yeah.
And also, I would like to ask a question to Jim McCoy.
Okay, but we're talking about on this specific subject.
Yes. No, I know. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm back to sleep.
Okay. Yeah, you can go back to sleep, and we'll come back to you for your question for Jim McCoy. Mr. Foodie.
Yes.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm doing okay. Would you like some time on the call today?
Yes, I could give you an update.
Okay. Well, we will get to you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So, yeah. So back to the issues around Dell. One other thing I just did want to mention in that regard, that Alicia Morgans and Maha Hussein are going to be speaking in Chicago at an US2 event, and it is on November 9th. I will try and post it on our events. I told us to I would post it on our events, but they've got an all-day session at the Robert Laurie Medical Research Center in the center of Chicago. I think that's part of Northwestern. And they are going to be welcoming, amongst others, Maha Hussein and Alicia Morgans. And they've got a geneticist that's going to be talking. So if you can get to that event, it might be very worthwhile. It might be something that you and Del might even think about going to together, Les.
Do you happen to know if they're going to record that? A lot of the stuff that US2 has been doing, they've been recording it, and you can later view it online. Do you know if they'll be doing that this time?
Okay, here's what it says. I will send this to you as well. Les, US2. I have to make notes as I go along here, Les, otherwise I'll forget afterwards. It says attend the event in person, enjoy a heart-healthy, prostate-healthy lunch, or watch the online webcast providing live audio and video. It's all free of charge. So there you go. You don't have to schlep over to the Loop. You can do that from Rock Island. Okay?
Okay, thanks.
Pleasure. All right, so Cam, let us come back to you and pick up with this fairly in-your-face meeting that you had with your doc recently. Maybe you just want to go over that again for us quickly, but it certainly sounds like a bit of a shocker.
Oh, it took me a good 48 hours to get over it, but I've said to my oncologist here that I don't want to be told that there's hope if there's no hope. So we're kind of hedging our bets that maybe something comes along while I'm still here, or the more likely outcome is that it doesn't. And I've got a 6 and an 8 and a 11-year-old boy, so he's probably helping me make some plans that I probably wouldn't do because I'm an internal optimist in terms of being able to defeat this cancer, even though I seem to be running out of options. But I think you know where I'm at now. I've had the Provenge. I'm now resistant to bicalutamide, and my options are apalutamide, enzalutamide, abiraterone, or some Keytruda or some other combination in San Francisco that has a very low chance of success and might preclude me from anything that's coming down the pipeline. So I don't know. I've got all these options in front of me, and at the moment I'm not being treated, other than the fact I've had the bilateral orchiectomy anyway. So yeah, I'm just sitting. To me, I feel as fit as anything I've been in a long time, but inside, obviously, the cancer's determined not to give up.
So the question I have for you is, why have you tried a second-line anti-androgen yet? Either abiraterone, enzalutamide, apalutamide, darolutamide. Have you tried any of them yet?
No, I've been hovering around with, so once I started the bicalutamide, or Casodex, or whatever you want to call it, in November last year, when I became, when the PSA started rising again after the orchiectomy. So I've sat hovering around a relatively steady PSA for that period. Then I went and had the Provenge, which had a small drop in the PSA, and then my last 5 PSA tests over a 3-month period have been slightly increasing. So it's only now that we're considering the apalutamide or enzalutamide, but it's different over here. You've got to have I don't even actually think I'm going to qualify for compensated drugs at the moment because I don't have a great enough tumor burden, or I don't know. There's so many lists you have to go through to work out what you can and can't get without having to fork out 10 grand a hit.
So what did you say your most recent PSA is?
0.170.
0.17. Okay. Now, and you're not showing, or what's the metastasis are you showing?
I had a gallium-68 PET CT scan on the 2nd of September that didn't show anything.
Okay.
So that's after, if you remember, my history's been radical prostatectomy, ADT, docetaxel, stereotactic, whatever it's called, SBRT for the bone met, orchiectomy, and so yeah, we just keep hitting it very hard from the initial cancer diagnosis, which was pretty bad with a Gleason 4+5 and grade 5 cancer at 43 years old. So, but I'm turning 46 at the end of November, so I've made a couple of extra years at least.
Well, why is your doc telling you that he's running out of options when I can certainly think of 5 or 6? That's where I'm a little puzzled. I mean, we've got second-line anti-androgens, third-line treatments, lutetium treatments, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean,
I don't think I'm running out of, I'm running out of options. I must, in terms of once you move to these things, you don't know how long they're going to last. So right. you can go on enzalutamide and it might give you a couple of years, 3, whatever, or it might give you 10 months. So I suppose where I'm always hedging my bets on the worst case scenario because I've got a young family and I need to plan accordingly. So that's where I'm coming from it. I still live in the hope that I'm going to see my 6-year-old turn 18. So that would be fantastic.
I mean, you'll hear if you stick on the call, you'll hear Richard Foodie tell you that he got 4 years out of enzalutamide. Now he's dealing with a small cell neuroendocrine type of disease because it's morphed, but he got 4 years out of enzalutamide.
I got 30 months out of it myself.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Jake got 2.5 years out of it. So, I mean, to me, when you say, well, the doc says you should start making plans for your small kids, I have a tough time hearing that when.
Me too.
You could respond well. Also, have you had your tumor sequenced?
There was no, so I had the genetic testing done and there were no mutations that were of significance other than, off the top of my head, P10 and some other, I think you had Bill look at it beforehand too. There was nothing to stand out. There's also now not enough to go back and do any other testing at this stage, like circulating tumor cells and so forth.
Right. So what was it that they tested originally? Was it your original tumor?
Yes, the original tumor.
Okay. Now, was that the metastatic spot in the rib, or was that from the prostate?
From the prostate.
Okay.
Or either the prostate or the lymph. No, prostate, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, so I've done enough digging. I'm going to throw it open. Len, why don't you kick this off for a discussion with Cam?
Did you say Len, me?
I did say Len, you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm as shocked as Rick is, Cam, to hear that your doctor told you that when your PSA is 0.17 and you have so many options for treatment still available to you. that could easily take you out several years. And then who knows what additional treatments we'll have several years from now. So that was, to me, that's kind of so irresponsible. I think I would not even go back to that guy, but if you're comfortable with him, I guess you stay with him. But I know you're not on our call too often, but I'm also a Gleason 9 like yourself. And when I was diagnosed, it was already outside the capsule into lymph nodes, seminal vesicles. And I got 2.5 years of just being on drug holiday, where even though my PSA it had arisen after radiotherapy, it had risen from 0.1 to 0.5. It just plateaued at 0.5 for about 2 years before it started going up again, and then I needed additional treatment. And that's on no therapy, a Gleason 9. So, for that doc to tell you that it's irresponsible doesn't make any sense to me. And
I think just going back on what he was saying, it is in the light of we've developed a relationship where there's no bullshit. So he's aware of me being pretty blunt with everything I do in life. So I think it's more in the context of, well, add this to your checklist because, I've seen people go through this process and forget to do this and you get too sick and you can't do it. So I don't actually believe that him saying that was in a irresponsible manner because of the relationship we formed. So maybe the way I said that initially, the call is incorrect, but where he's coming from is to make sure that he knows that I want everything sorted before this thing does take over, if and when it does stop me in my tracks. Because at the moment it doesn't. So while it doesn't stop me in my tracks, I want to make sure I've ticked all the main boxes. And to be honest, when you've got a young family, one of those is a box that I had not really considered. Leaving messages for your children is a very hard and confronting thing to do, but I also don't want to consider that if I'm in a really bad state, because then what do you don't want to leave video messages when you look like a 90-year-old and you're frail and so forth. If I want to do them, I want to do them when I look like I do now. So I think where my oncologist was coming from was more that perspective than let's throw in the towel. So I'm certainly not throwing in the towel and don't believe that there's many options. I want to just keep on we talk it in terms of staying on the chessboard. No one wants to win. I just want to stay on the chessboard. So you just keep moving me around that chessboard with all your different drugs and whatever else you want until someone comes up with something that turns this into a chronic illness and not a death sentence. So I'm still got a mildly positive attitude about it, even though, sometimes you just crawl in the corner and burst into tears when you think about why the hell me at 43. But anyway, enough from me yapping on.
Peter, did you want to say something? You're about halfway between the two of us, so maybe Cam will hear you better than he hears the rest of us.
Yeah, I was just wondering, Cam, whether you consider yourself on intermittent status at this point. That's where I am. That's what Len was alluding to. He started, I've been on and off drugs for 5 years now, and right now I'm off and feeling pretty good, but I know the shoe's going to fall again, and I'll probably have to go back on something. I'm also Gleason 9, not quite as metastatic as you, and quite a bit older. But I feel like I'm in. It's not just the docs kind of ferreting out what to do. I take responsibility for my own life as well, and right now I feel like being off drugs. But I'm willing to go back. I'm a little nervous when I do go back. What I want to do. I've got real serious questions about that. So that's just my question to you: is do you consider yourself on intermittent status, being self-directed that way?
Well, I suppose all the decisions I've made, I don't believe anything other than the original radical prostatectomy was made without me having lots of consideration. That was rushed ahead because it all of a sudden just hit. Everything else has been thoroughly considered by me. I reckon I could actually open up my own practice and become a medical oncologist and get away with at least 100 patients before anyone knew that I wasn't an oncologist.
I agree.
Guaranteed I could do that. So I don't consider myself in that intermittent stage because of the bilateral orchiectomy. All of the side effects of the consistent hormone therapy are with me all the time anyway, because I have no testosterone. It's the fact that I'm just such a stubborn prick and I eat healthy and I exercise every day. I'm supposed to be fat and have breasts and all this sort of business, but I've got more muscle than I've had in the last 20 years just because I'm so stubborn. So I run out of energy and that by 5 o'clock every day, but I'm up at 6 a.m. every morning doing an hour's worth of gym work just because I know that that's one good thing for me to do. Going off bicalutamide is a decision that my oncologist made. Well, obviously I'm resistant to it, so of course we're going to go off it. But also I've heard that some people get a little bit of a respite where you have a few months where your PSA stabilizes or goes down after going off bicalutamide. So I'm happy to not be on that, although I said to Ken the other day, because I know he already went off it, I've felt a little bit weird being off it for 6 days, and I'm not sure whether that's coming off the drug or I've just felt more fatigue and less energy than usual. But the other side of that is that maybe I'm just, going through that next stage of becoming resistant and feeling really crap about yourself because, you keep fighting this damn cancer and then every time you see somebody, they tell you something bad. It's very rare to get some good news. So maybe my feeling of extra fatigue and not great is just all mental at the moment. But I'm happy to be off whatever drugs.
It's Larry Fish. Hi. I just wanted to say, something surprised me. I mean, of course, it was kind of surprising to hear the way that your doctor reacted, what he discussed. And I just had two comments. The first was, I came off bacalutamide, I got 2.5 years from that so far. My PSA is starting to go up already, and I'm getting ready to look at second-line androgens, which can give me a year, 2 years, or more, and before I even look at third line and other options. So that was just want to encourage you that it's possible that you're going to get that kind of result where it might not just, the bicalutamide might not just last just a few months, it may last a long time. I know it has done that for a few people. And the other comment was when you talked about like throwing away your $110 to see the doc and have him tell you this bullshit stuff, is that the one thing is you pay the $100 to sit and discuss all of the available options that you're thinking about and get like his opinion about them. And that's why I throw my money away seeing my doctor, is to spend the time discussing all the options, because we haven't come to a clear decision what to do next. That's my two comments.
Cam,
I was just going to say, I do get, that is the main reason, obviously, I see my oncologist, is to get the latest, and I know that he's actually well connected in terms of what's coming down the trial pipeline and the like. So yes, that's why I do it. I was a bit flippant before because it was one of those appointments that just slapped you in the face. But yes, he's well aware that I want to keep throwing the kitchen sink at the cancer, and that's why I see them. He says, I want to see you every 2 or 3 months, and I say, no, I'll see you in 3 weeks' time. So that's what I do.
Way to go. Way to go.
Jake.
Yeah, I was just going to say that bicalutamide response that you mentioned, it's called an androgen withdrawal syndrome. And about 30% of people do actually get that, and they get a benefit for at least a few months after stopping it. Hopefully you'll be one of that percentage. It'd probably take you a couple of months to know one way or the other. And I just wanted to point out also that I was on bicalutamide for 15 months, and it worked till finally my PSA started going up much higher than yours is. Then I went to enzalutamide, and it worked for we said earlier 2.5 years. So you got plenty of hope, my man.
Thank you, Jake.
And there's something else you need to add, which is that your liquid biopsy from Foundation Medicine suggests that you could be responsive to bicalutamide again now.
Yeah. This doesn't apply to you, Cam, but yeah, it's I found out that with the liquid biopsy, I found out that I have a couple of AR mutations that make me resistant, that I developed over time, that make me resistant to abiraterone, Xtandi, and Erlita. But at the same time, now they're saying that because of those same mutations, I might be susceptible to bicalutamide again, which is weird. It did stop working once, but since I developed the mutations, the thought is and the hope is that it'll work again. So that doesn't apply to you because you said they didn't find any mutations in your biopsy, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Right, but the point is it's in Cam's future. So,
right.
I
like hearing that I've got a future, Rick, and you can keep saying that as often as you like.
Well, but that's
you do. You should have a great future.
And this is what we want you to take away from this. There's so much stuff that's out there, and yes, nothing is going to, no treatment is probably going to last indefinitely. But these treatments could manage you for a long, long time, different treatments. And then, God forbid, at some point you will develop a metastasis, at which point it can be biopsied, it can be sequenced, and there may be mutations in there that will make you eligible for drugs that aren't even on your radar right now.
Right.
So
got to live in hope. Yep.
You probably die of something else. You might get kicked in the head by a kangaroo.
That's right.
Now they're not down the corner of every street like you think.
Only the boxing kangaroos are at the corner.
Yeah. I only see them if I go down to the zoo. That's all.
All right, well, we've got to move on, but we're going to keep Cam in the picture because Jim McCoy wanted to know about Provenge. Jim, let me turn it to you about Provenge.
Okay, I'm unmuting here. Oh, am I unmuted? Okay. I just want to hear from guys who have actually had Provenge and what their opinion of it is, and do they believe it has helped them?
Okay. So Cam certainly will respond to you. I don't know that we've got anybody else on today who's had, has anybody else had Provenge who's on today? I guess Cam's the man. Cam, you're back up.
Okay, well, I mean, Provenge, from my understanding of Provenge, is that, and the reason that it's not approved in Australia is that it doesn't show, it's not proven to have a PSA decrease or a tumor decrease. So it's very hard to measure whether there's any success from it other than the stats that they produce, where I think the median overall survival was a 4-month benefit. So to be honest, I don't know whether it's done anything to me or not. The process itself, I absolutely hated with a passion. They take all your blood out twice and shove it back in, and that was just very unpleasant. But the putting the cells back in was fine. So I didn't feel anything different other than I think I said to Ken, I felt sort of supercharged after each infusion. Maybe that was all in my head again. or maybe that was the fact that I was in San Francisco, you know, going up and down streets that I'd seen in movies all my life. But yeah, I can't, it's very hard to comment about Provenge because there's no clear, visible or testable proof that it worked or has done anything.
Yes, that there are, I believe, more medical oncologists who consider it a non-event. The only med-onc that I know that's enthusiastic about it is Tanya Dorf, who claims to have had at least 2 complete remissions by it, but she seems to be a cohort of 1.
Well, have you talked to Larry about it? Have you talked to Larry Fong about it? Because I think he probably endorses it pretty strongly.
There's a long story around that one.
Okay.
I'll just leave it at that. There's a long story around that one.
Have Provenge? Didn't Carl Foreman have Provenge? Maybe Jim could talk to him.
No, he hasn't had Provenge. Carl has not done. Oh, maybe he has. Yes,
I think he has.
But he just did it. He just did it. We have a lot of guys who have done it. Jim.
Yeah, in fact, you know, Rick, I completed it shortly after Cam did.
Oh, right.
So, and Paul's comment was that he supported it and he thought the 4-month was underestimated. He said at MD Anderson they think it's more like overall survival plus 14 months. So I don't know where he gets that data, but he in his most recent email did in fact state that he supported doing Provenge.
Thanks, Ken.
I think the point is though that if you've got access to it and can and do it, you've got nothing really to lose from it. So I'm kind of the sort of person that will take anything if there's any chance of a benefit. So yeah, why not? There's obvious proof that it does add some sort of extension to overall survival. So why not do it?
Yeah, you know, I think the biggest issue with Provenge is the timing of when you get it. And Larry Fong has said to me that you need what he calls a good landing strip for it. So the earlier you can get it, the more likely it is to be effective. And in fact, that there are even some tests, right? There's a clinical trial right now going on for Provenge, with Provenge for men on active surveillance, which is kind of interesting. And I believe they're recruiting right now.
Well, isn't it supposed to be going backwards and backwards? Because Larry said to me that it was the ideal time to do it for me was with a low PSA burden and just bordering on castrate-resistant prostate cancer. So exactly. That was certainly his message to me.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. The longer the landing strip, the longer the time you have in front of you, the more effective it's going to be. So, I don't want to, Jim, I don't want to sort of dig in. Maybe we could talk offline about whatever happened between you and Larry, but I do know for a long time that that Larry has always said that the earlier the better. And I mean, and some of you guys have heard me say this on this call before, but I don't think Cam has, that back around 2009, 2010, they were actually testing it on men pre radical prostatectomy. And when they took out the prostate and they sliced it up, they could see the dendritic cells surrounding the cancer of the prostate cancer cells. So, I mean, there's definitely reason to believe that early use of Provenge has some benefit. The biggest problem, as Cam also rightly says, is it's very hard to measure. It's, it's like chicken soup. It probably isn't going to hurt you, and it may well help you, but how much it'll help you, we don't know. We don't know. Anybody else want to say
Also-
anything on
Also
Provenge?
getting the insurance company to pay for it. I mean,
And getting, exactly, yes.
everything's stacked against you for getting early treatment. I mean,
Exactly, yeah,
a lot of us
exactly.
would jump at it if it was available. And they,
Yeah.
intimate that there's these trials, but there's nothing approved yet.
Right. Okay, we will move on from Provenge. Larry Fish, did you say you had a quick question? Mr. Fish?
I'm here. Actually, I didn't say that, but now I do have one.
Okay.
And that is, does anybody have a feeling about, well, do some people feel like, can you feel any changes in your body before you get any indication that there's some kind of labs or scans or progression? Does anybody talks about like something that you can feel physically or mentally? Well, more physically. I don't mean, ESP. Something concrete that people feel before the next progression might take place? Or is it usually like the doctors think, the blood shows first?
Good question. Anybody want to say anything on this?
Well, I certainly felt my rib met before it was proven on the PET scan to be metastases. But then again, after the stereotactic body radiation therapy, a year later, my rib fractured, so I felt that too. But other than that, I haven't felt anything else come up.
Yeah, Larry, this is Jake. I'm the same way. I haven't really felt. I mean, I have Mets that are all over my spine and in my shoulder, and I've had low back pain for years, even before I had cancer, and it hasn't really gotten worse. Even though my PSA is rising, it has not gotten worse in my case.
Yeah, that's what I've been heard to believe, but I just was thinking about it the other day.
You can talk yourself into all kinds of things.
Anybody else seem to have advanced telegraph that their disease is worsening, and then maybe it does? No.
I'd be concerned that would become a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I would try and dismiss those negative thoughts.
That's what I'm saying. You can talk yourself into feeling things.
Right.
Psychosomatic, exactly.
Yeah, no, I wasn't thinking of it in negative terms, in pessimism or freaking out kind of terms at all. It was just a thought that occurred to me.
Well, I want to come back to Len for a sec. Len,
Yeah.
this is an ideal time, Len, for you to give a plug to your recent blog post.
Uh-oh, which one? Oh, the meditation?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, if you want to go to ancan.org, go to the blogs, and I guess you could just type in meditation or just scroll down until you see mindfulness meditation resources. There's a 2-page Word document there that you could open up, download it, and it's got a list of dozens of mostly free online mindfulness recordings. Some are guided, some have music, some have both. Yoga, meditation, and mindfulness. Take a look. Might help you.
Okay, so we're going to go to Jerry Pelfrey, and then we're going to go to Peter's quick question, and then we're going to go to Mr. Foodie. Jerry, you are up next, and you'd like to prepare for an upcoming
Yes.
appointment.
I really want to throw out the question of I am going to have proton pencil beam therapy on my prostate. The radiology oncologist wanted to do IMRT, and I talked them out of that, and I wanted to know if anyone else has already had the pencil beam proton. Nobody's talking.
Yes, I'll talk. I've had it, and I highly recommend it.
How long were the?
Let Jim Jim, you finish, and Jerry, make a note of your questions and come back to it.
Right.
Go ahead, Jim.
If you're getting pencil beam proton therapy, especially pencil beam with conical beam CT daily aiming, you're getting what this engineer considers the state of the art. And it's highly, highly controversial for a lot of reasons in the radiation oncology world. Primarily because there's about 100 times more radiation oncologists doing IMRT or X-ray based therapies than there are doing proton, and it costs more to do proton. I had no trouble getting insurance to cover it. The engineering realities of proton penetrating human tissue compared to X-ray shout to an engineer that there's lower non-target tissue damage with proton, and all the screaming and fighting about it is really a matter of economics. And I would encourage you to move ahead with it. You are your own quarterback, and I think I should just stop there.
Well, thank you. I had read a lot about proton versus IMRT, and everything you said is what I read. Plus the fact that with proton, it doesn't go all the way through your body like X-ray does. So it has supposedly, at least, less side effects, less damage to good cells in the surrounding area.
Jerry, you having this as primary treatment to the prostate? This is your first?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I've been through proton for recurrence, for metastatic spread in my abdominal lymph nodes a year ago. And oddly enough, I hosted a forum here last week with Dr. Mark Schultz and our local radiation oncologist here on Maui and myself. We were doing the Q&A, and this question came up about proton beam. Someone from the audience asked about it. And the local radiation oncologist jumped all over it, saying, well, there's bad side effects, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And thankfully, Mark Schultz jumped in and said, well, wait a minute, that's old information. That's when Loma Linda was doing it 10, 15 years ago. Since then, the whole game has changed. The equipment is new, and you can't go by side effects from experience 15 years ago. So I have a good friend who was on the call. He had it a year ago, his primary treatment. He was a Gleason 10 and had it his primary treatment, and he's doing fine. I still talk to him all the time. So it is covered by Medicare. You know, I think Medicare covers. I think it's one of the few cancers that is covered by Medicare for except for children, for pediatrics. And you want to go to a good center with good modern equipment. It's and a doctor's good experience. That's the secret, I think. I went to Dr. Carl Rossi in Miramar, California, California Proton Cancer Center, and they've got the latest and greatest stuff over there. So you're wherever you're going, just make sure you're going to experienced people. That's my.
I'm going to Mayo in Phoenix, which is one of the sites that has that. And just for your information, if cost is an issue, Mayo, at least at Phoenix, well, Mayo and Rochester too, they don't charge any more for the proton beam pencil than they do for an IMRT. Now, he explains that by saying that Mayo buys, they don't lease, they don't rent, they outright buy the equipment. So that allows them evidently to play with the cost differential. And so they've made it cost the same as an IMRT.
I think Les had it done at Mayo in Rochester last year, not for primary, but for like me for metastatic lymph nodes.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing.
Go ahead, Les.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say Mayo in Arizona does have the latest, newest, best technology. Period.
Yeah. Dr. Shields is, he's just he was the head of RO at Mayo Phoenix, but he wants to write some more, and I guess he's a little tired of the administration part of it, so he is stepping down from that. But he's a good guy. He knows his stuff, and I just clicked with him right away, which is important to me too. Right. So the only other question I have on that is they are putting in, I think, 3 markers. And I've gotten the information of it hurts like hell or it doesn't hurt. So I don't any input that anyone's had in putting markers in your prostate?
Well, I can certainly tell you my experience, which was that Shinohara at UCSF put in my markers, and he said to me, "Well, I am going to give you some lidocaine," and I felt a little bit of stinging. I thought he was giving me the lidocaine, and the next thing he said, "Well, we're all done." I said, "I thought that was the lidocaine." "No," he says, "I'm all done. I put in the markers. I'm all finished." So. So for me, it was pretty much a non-event. A little bit of stinging, which I thought was the lidocaine, putting it in, and that was it. Who else wants to talk? Anyone else want to talk about having had prostate markers implanted?
It's a non-event. You won't feel a thing.
Right.
Good. That's
Agreed.
like my original biopsy. I was talking to my urologist, and the next thing I knew, he said, "Well, we're done." I didn't feel a thing.
Right.
So I hope that works with the markers. I guess the way they do it is through the peritoneal area. And
not in my case, it wasn't. It was through the rectum.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, it was the same process as the biopsy.
Yeah. About how long, and this depends on the individual, but about how long was the treatment? Like 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6? I can't seem to get any clarification, if you will, on every day for how many weeks?
What?
But I guess it comes after they determine after the dosimetrist, the physicist, and the doc talk it over and get the whole program set up. Then they determine how many days. I really don't know how that.
What you just described is accurate.
Okay.
They have increased.
So, go ahead, Jim McCoy.
They have increased the dosage of each individual treatment, which only takes less than a minute for each day that you go in. I had 42 days, the same for the same diagnosis. Rossi tells me it would be 28 days today. They've proven that it's what's the term? It's not negative. It's equivalent in terms of adverse effects. So shorter is good, and if they don't want to commit to a number until after they've done their computer homework, I think they're being smart.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just trying to get the general. Okay, that's where I'm headed.
Okay, and when do you think you might start, Jerry?
Well, October 30th, I get the markers put in, and then November 4th they do the simulation, and then they said anywhere from 5 to 10 days for them to get everything set up. So I don't know whether they're going to start immediately after. I threw a wrench in it for them because we're going up to Seattle for a week over Thanksgiving. All our kids and our grandkids, we're all having Thanksgiving together.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to miss that. So I don't know if they will start and then stop and then start again. I know that Dr. Shields said he'd like to do it all in one fell swoop. No intermediate stops and starts. So I don't know how I'm going to work that out.
Are you going to be driving back and forth from Prescott every day?
Trying not to do that. Don't want to do that. We're looking into things down in Phoenix where there might even be some things through Mayo that we can get some help. Because even though it's an hour and 45 minutes, doing that every day would just be too much, especially since, from what I understand, the fatigue on this builds up so that you have a lot more fatigue at the end of your procedures than you do at the beginning.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't want to be in a car with any serious, fatigue or any of that. So we're trying to find a place around, but then again, we don't know the date yet.
Right.
So I can't really start out until I find the date.
Right.
That's why I was wondering.
Okay. Well, let's move along. Peter.
Hey, Rick, I just wanted to say one thing for Jerry. That is, once he gets his dates set, let me know. There might be something we could do as far as housing.
Thank you, Ken. Do you guys have each other? Do you have each other's contact?
Yeah. You actually sent them to us after the last meeting.
Right. Yep. We do.
Yeah,
Okay.
we do.
Thank you so much, Ken. Thank you.
Jerry, this is Peter. One thing I learned that in retrospect goes back to kind of what Len was talking about earlier with mindfulness. You might want to think about podcasts or music or something like that, because you're going to be lying really still for about 45 minutes. And if you could find something to focus on, it would make it a little more comfortable.
Well, is it any different than an MRI or a CT? I haven't seen it, so.
No, it's not that much different. Yeah, no, it's just you got to be still, and what's going through your mind is, God, if I move, it's going to shoot something someplace it shouldn't shoot. I mean, so just something to focus your mind on, so you're not just a nervous wreck.
Okay. Good time to meditate.
Well, or listen to something.
Okay, thank you.
Peter, do they
I like
use
classical
a
music.
body cast like they do with IMRT?
They had my head in, not a body cast, but they had my head and neck in something. It was awkward. It was uncomfortable.
Nothing where.
Once the machine wasn't working right, and it took an hour and a half, and I was climbing the wall on that one.
Yeah, well.
Peter, you said you had a quick question, and then we'll go to Mr. Foodie.
Yeah, this came up about probably 2 or 3 years ago, and I was working on the roof over the weekend with my son. I was on my knees, up and down ladders and stuff. And last night I had a night from hell with muscle cramps. And I know we've talked about this before. Someone mentioned some kind of salve several years ago, and then I don't, I take plenty of calcium, but maybe it's manganese or like that I need to take.
Okay.
Peter, it's Dennis.
You're our cramp man. You've always got the solution.
You got a pencil there?
Yes, I'm ready to go.
Thera Works. THERAWORX.
Thera Works. Okay.
Get the one that's got a pump and it's like a almost, it comes out like a shaving cream type. The liquid spray is kind of messy and hard to use. It comes in both forms.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, you could do it before your exercise or do it after, or it'll prevent it.
Hey, Peter.
Yeah,
University of Washington states for their football players, when they get muscle cramps, a tablespoon of yellow mustard.
Aha, okay.
Now,
good. It was last night. I didn't sleep at all. It was just constant all night long.
And let me just add that when they say yellow mustard, hopefully they mean French's and not Coleman's, because a tablespoon of Coleman's mustard, you wouldn't be sleeping too much either.
No. Okay. Thanks much, guys.
Anybody else have anything on cramps before we go to Richard? Okay. Mr. Foodie, I think most of the folks know that you came off your enzalutamide and because it was no longer working, and you started that carboplatin regime. And we were actually talking a little bit about carboplatin early on. So they're up to date there, but tell us, are you back on your carboplatin and etoposide? And if so, how are you managing?
I just finished a 3-day chemo session, so I'm holding up okay. And a little while ago, I had my Neulasta shot, and everything's okay. I'm a little funky and a little sleepy, but it's okay. The news is that so as Rick alluded to earlier, my cancer morphed to this small cell cancer, and so that's when they put me on the carboplatin and etoposide. And then I also had a 5-day radiation treatment, and in September, so that started in June or July, and then in September I had a CT scan, and they found that the tumors and masses around the prostate gland had decreased significantly. My bone mets were unchanged, but then my oncologist said that they think I've got lung cancer, and that there was they've been monitoring nodules in my lungs for since I started getting CT scans at MSK, and so she was really concerned about the activity, and there was one nodule that had grown, and she said it was serious and life-threatening, and that there was only one treatment, and that was immunotherapy, and that's also life-threatening. And so that was on Friday, September 13th, and so that was quite an appointment. And so I reached out to Len and even Rick for help in to how to handle this, and Len drafted some questions for me to speak to the doctor about a week later, and I did, and the questions were about immunotherapy, because for prostate cancer, it's about a 25% positive response rate, which could be like an extra month, or it could be, I guess, a cure or remission or something like that. It runs the full gamut, but that's only 25%, and many of the other patients that are taking immunotherapy stop taking it because it's pretty hard. But anyhow, in the course of this conversation, it was on September 20th, the oncologist mentioned that the radiation oncologist thought it was lung cancer, but my pulmonologist wasn't convinced that it was lung cancer. And she thought it was inflammation and infections, which I have a history of that, and usually once a year I get antibiotics because my lungs get really funky. And so that sort of slipped out in this conversation. I mean, and a week earlier I was thinking that I was going to be dying in 2 to 4 months, or I had less than a year, and now it's here's the pulmonologist saying I don't think it's lung cancer. And so I started reaching out to other people, and Len, and I spoke to nearly a dozen people, and almost all of them had cancer experience, either as a patient or survivor or caregiver or even a medical professional, and they all said, are they going to do a biopsy? And I said, no, the biopsy was never discussed. And they said, well, they're making a diagnosis without a biopsy. And as Len pointed out, it could be 3 things. It could be like a lung infection, or it could be lung cancer, or it could be metastasized prostate cancer. And but they won't know unless they do a biopsy. So I wrote a note to my oncologist and said that I'd like to get back together with her. And Len had volunteered to help. We had great conversations, and he did some research for me. He was great support. And I know, Rick, you got involved too with some phone calls, but I appreciate that very much. And so Len came with me to my appointment on October 11th, and we were prepared. I had a list of questions and 3 topics: is it or isn't it lung cancer, and the biopsy, prostate cancer. I wanted to find out more about what happened when my cancer transformed or morphed, and then immunotherapy. And so I gave her the questions as well so that she could have them. But then she said, what I'd like to do is I'd like to give you a history of your disease from when they first discovered it to today. And I think that might answer a number of your questions. And so it was wonderful for me to go back over it, fresh in my mind, and reminded me of where I was and where I've come from and the different treatments that I've had. And, you know, I became very grateful for my medical team for allowing me to still be here today, you know, with the work that they did for me. But then we got to a point where she says, you know, and I know, unlike that November or September 13th appointment, I know that she had researched my history, because there were things that she was mentioning that were like little facts. And she said that, you know, she said, I think, Len, it was something like, you know, like, I'm now not convinced that it's lung cancer, but I'm not sure. So she backed away from this diagnosis that it was lung cancer. And what she said was that we're going to continue with, we'll have 2 more chemo treatments, and then I'll have a CT scan in November and a bone scan, and we'll take a look at what the results are, and then we'll, you know, discuss it then. We won't talk about immunotherapy or anything like that. As far as the lung biopsy, I have not been able to speak to the pulmonologist. She was busy the past 2 weeks, but I'm going to be reaching out to her today or tomorrow and have a phone call with her this week, I hope, to find out why she said she didn't think it was lung cancer. And I want to talk to her about a lung biopsy. My oncologist said that the reason I have COPD with some emphysema, I'm an ex-smoker, and I have many nodules. So if they were to do a lung or a needle biopsy into the lung, if there's a lot of nodules, which one has the cancer? You know, so they could stick a couple of nodules and not get one that has cancer.
Richard, it's Len. I just want to cut in for a moment just to keep you on track here for time. We're actually at the end of our session.
Okay.
So if you could, it's probably better if you come back after some of these issues are resolved and let us know how it all came out. But is there anything in particular you wanted to mention to the group for today in terms of what you've recently done since you and I last met with Dr. Rathkoff?
I've seen a therapist, and I'm seeing a therapist now to deal with, you know, what I experienced. And I joined a new support group at MSK, cancer patients in treatment. And today I met 2 guys who have lung cancer, believe it or not, and are being treated for lung cancer. And that's helpful. But that's a good point, Len. So I'll check back in a couple of weeks.
So a couple of things, Mr. Foodie. One is we would love you to come on the Speaking Freely call, which is a really good call to discuss some of these issues. Was hoping you might have joined us last Thursday. The next one's not till next month. Secondly, I think some of the guys might be very interested in hearing about briefly right now is how are you managing on carboplatin and etoposide? Has it been tough on you? Have you been sailing through it? Is it somewhere in between? Because that's not a regimen that is too common.
Right. The last session I had 3 weeks ago was really rough, and it beat me up. But what I did on Thursday, my treatments were Friday, Saturday, Sunday, is that I said a prayer and I said I need help because I don't want to go through what I went before. And so a little while later, I got an answer, and the answer was that, you know, don't forget, you know, the carboplatin and the etoposide, they're helping you. They're helping to heal your body of cancer. They're helping to stop and slow the progression of the disease. So it's really good. You know, this is really good. It's really helping you. But you know, with the good, there's bad. So there's side effects, and they're only temporary. You can handle it. You got it. But don't forget about the positive. You know, the good thing, the goodness of this, of these chemo, these medications. And so when I saw that and I realized that, I've been thinking about that constantly. You know, when I went to sleep that night, and when I woke up in the morning, and when I went to the chemo suite, and I was just thinking about, boy, this is great. I'm so lucky to be getting this medication. It's going to be helping me. So I was just putting a lot of positive energy into my mind, into my body, and my emotions, and that has helped me a lot. I can't believe how much that's helped me. So maybe it's like that's mindfulness or something like that, but this was the most concentrated effort I've had to try to be positive about my experience, and it helped me a lot.
Good. And a lot of people say, and I know it's tough because you're going through a lot, but to try and do some sort of modified exercise right the way through, because it helps you deal more comfortably with the chemo. I'm sure Donna can help you with, Donna Wilson can help you with something during chemo.
Yeah, I've been going to physical therapy twice a week to continue to recover from the hospital, and then I go to the PEX class, and I didn't know that you could exercise during chemo, and I asked my oncologist, and she said you can exercise during chemo. So today I went to Blink, an inexpensive gym, and I did some cardio. So and the exercise too is key. In addition to the positive thinking.
It helps. Richard, there's a story that Donald Abrams, who is the head of integrative oncology at UCSF, tells about a friend of his in Chicago who actually administers the chemo whilst his patients are walking on a treadmill. So it is really good, and everybody that I've talked to who has tried to do some limited exercise during chemotherapy has been very thankful, and they've gotten good results.
Yeah.
Anyway, look, the witching hour has arrived. We're only 5 minutes late, so that's not too bad. We have covered a lot of stuff today. I'm just looking at my notes of all the things I've got to put when I do the description for this tomorrow. We will be having a meeting next week on Tuesday, the 5th Tuesday. It'll be our second Tuesday meeting on the 29th. So that'll be 6 o'clock Eastern time, 3 o'clock Pacific, etc., etc. Come speak to us next week. Cam, I'm delighted you've been able to join us for the whole of this session. Maybe you've gotten a good feel for all the different types of treatment that are out there. So,
yeah, I'll endeavour to get on more of the sessions. I do try.
Yeah.
It's just this time of the morning here. It's challenging when you've got 3 kids to get off to school and the like. But I do enjoy the sessions, and I find them very interesting. And as always, I found ANCAN to be extremely supportive of getting me through some tough times.
Our pleasure. All right, gents. So, tomorrow we have our second MS multiple sclerosis group. So, if any of you have any friends that are living with multiple sclerosis of any type, please send them to the ANCAN website, and you know the routine once you join. And we have some really terrific moderators for that group. So with different types of MS, a lot of experience. So send them our way if you run across them. And we'll speak to you all again next week on the 29th. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Right.
Good night. Thanks.
Good night. Thank you. Safe trip home to everybody who's traveling.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.